Today on Top of Mind, I am joined by several of the Kauffman Global Scholars. This is the global edition of Top of Mind. Guys, I want to thank you for being here today on Top of Mind, and I thought maybe for the viewers we just start by introducing yourselves, give us a little background, who you are, where you're from, and then we'll talk a little bit about what this experience has been. And I think so that we are chivalrous, we will go ladies first. Kelly, if you want to start us off.
Sure, I'm Kelly Peeler, from originally New Jersey and from New York the past 3 years. I recently left a job on Wall Street to come start my own company, and have been really privileged to work with really great people at the Kauffman Foundation.
Thanks. Brandon?
Hi, my name is Brandon Iglesias, and from New Orleans, Louisiana, backgrounds in chemical engineering. Very grateful to be here with the Global Scholar Program, and main reason why I entered it was to discover what I don't know, because you don't know what you don't know until you're exposed to it.
Cool. And Eric?
My name is San Giorgi. I'm from the Netherlands, Rotterdam, and I'm 24 years old, and I'm a creative entrepreneur looking for new opportunities to bring back home and participate in the whole entrepreneurship vibe, which is going all over the world right now.
That's great. You are, of course, scholars in a program that we have several years in producing here at the Kauffman Foundation. So we thought we would just, open up conversation with the three of you on kind of like, well, let's start with what drew you into the program. And Eric, since you've probably traveled the longest distance, why don't we start with you? Like, why did you even consider applying to the Global Scholars Program?
I think the Kauffman Foundation was very strong in building communities, and in the Netherlands we created our own sub-community, or Kauffman created their own sub-community of former scholars, and they actually reached out to me and said, hey Eric, you really should check this program out. We've both done it and it's a life changer. So I think my fellow scholars I was really grateful that they
kind of recruited you.
Yeah, definitely.
Kelly, I'm going to move on to you. If I heard you correctly, and I know I did, you left a job on Wall Street to do this. So, I mean, this wasn't like something that you just casually decided to participate in. You had to consider kind of the opportunity cost, so to speak, of participating in this program.
Yeah, a lot of convincing my mom.
Oh, really?
No, not really. Well, sort of, but she thought I was a little nuts. But no, I had read a lot about the Kauffman Foundation through some work I had done in Iraq. So Kauffman had put out a lot of great post-war zone research about entrepreneurship. That's how I identified the Kauffman Foundation and sort of kept tabs on how amazing the place is, the organization, the commitment to thorough research on entrepreneurship. And so I just was really interested in what you guys were doing out here, and saw the Global Scholars Program, and it definitely aligned with an entrepreneurial itch I had, and a problem that I saw. So it was a great time to do that.
Well, 6 months later, was Mom right, or?
I think she'll always think I'm nuts, especially her and my grandmother. But I mean, I'm ahead of all the milestones that I've set for myself. I've done a mobile product. We've done a pilot program. I've met incredible people. I now know how to video edit because of Eric. So I think I've learned probably more than I have in the past 2 years combined.
Same question, like, why? What did you see in the program that got you interested in coming here and spending 6 months with us in this program?
Yeah, I think to answer that, I guess start with how I first became aware of the Kauffman Foundation. And that was through an internship program in Honolulu, Hawaii during undergraduate. And the first introduction to the Global Scholar Program was actually from an email through the iStart program in graduate school. How that came about, we did a business plan competition and placed into the competition. And from, I guess, the entry into the Kauffman Foundation's data initiatives, basically received an email saying, hey, there's this Global Scholar Program. And I'm sitting there in the lab tinkering and running experiments, and that's great. But the Global Scholar Program seemed to present an opportunity to cultivate a global network. And me being in the lab, having stuff working in the lab, that's great, but if I'm not able to facilitate the messaging of that appropriately, it does no good. So I looked at, okay, I could continue working in the lab, or I can kind of go into the unknown and maybe develop my network further to help later on with commercializing this technology that I've been tinkering around with.
I'd like to, pivot now and talk about that. So since we're still on you, let's stay with you and talk about, what is that technology? What were you working on in the lab, when you decided to join the program?
Yeah, sure. The technology I'm working on, it's a thermochemical process. All that means is you take an input and you subject it to high pressure, high temperature with a catalyst, and then you produce a product that's marketable. What I'm looking at is a synthetic crude oil. So how do you renewably produce a crude oil, whether it's from biomass or non-biomass sources? And how do you do that economically and efficiently? And how do you do that to where it is additive to the industry and not subtractive? So that was my focus on how to produce synthetic crude oil using a renewable process.
I think I understand what you meant by additive and not subtractive, because you were patient with me and you explained it over several hours. Perhaps for the viewers of Top of Mind, you can, because the part of it that I really am enamored with is this, it's going back and reclaiming, used wells and things that would be cast-offs or, liabilities to the industry. You're actually finding a new use for that. Can you explain that just a little more?
Yeah, so the premise of the technology is to run a reaction safely underground. And one way to do that is to look at used oil and gas wells that qualify for the technology. And once they qualify, then we can go in and rework the well and potentially convert it into a reactor that produces...
And ultimately produces something that's a renewable energy source, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
That's the ultimate objective. Yep.
It's neat when we do the application and selection process into the program. Believe it or not, it's pretty hard to get into. So you all distinguished yourselves in just being admitted to the program in the first place. So, Kelly, tell me, if you could, in your own words, what it is you're passionate about and what you were working on and what you brought into the program and where you are now with it.
So the company that I came into the program with was idea at that point was very different than where I am right now. And that was a result of the process that Kauffman sort of walked us through, and sort of always talking to people, being very proactive of actually solving a real problem, not just a sort of creative idea that you want to do for yourself, which is why it's changed a lot. The topic is still teaching and educating young adults on their personal finances in a way that's relatable to them, in the medium that they want it delivered, and also fun. Because a lot of times no one really tells you what it means to deposit a check or what your credit limit is, and those are really, really big topics for people to not get themselves into trouble. So that's generally what I'm working on right now. What I hopefully brought to the table was more of a finance background. I knew a lot of the topics that I was talking about myself, but just how to communicate them well was definitely what I learned from different people in the program.
So hopefully you're leaving the program now confident in your kind of pivoted model, and a go forward for you leaving the program would be what?
So over the program, I conducted a pilot program at a high school in New Jersey, which was great. So I demoed a mobile prototype with a bunch of students, got a lot of feedback, had people say, I hate this, I love this, I want it this way, I don't want it this way, which was amazing, because that's the whole point of building a product, is for people to use it. So that was great, and I have a real beta program coming up in the fall with several different other high schools.
That's amazing. So Eric, you're going to be getting on a plane and taking a bit of a flight going home. What are you going to be taking home with you from this experience and hope to develop further when you get back to the Netherlands?
I think to start with a beautiful community of new people I met, and I think relationships which will last till the end of time. And next to that, also a lot of new skills. I found out that I have to focus on my core capability, which is like building campaigns and creating innovative stuff to actually promote brands and that kind of stuff. So I think I really found what is the thing I should pursue and get even better at.
You said something there that we've talked about on Top of Mind before, and that is like the value of your community, that you've added to since you've been here. I seize and I pounce, as viewers of Top of Mind will attest to. I pounce on every opportunity to reaffirm that point, that there's value in networks, that in communities, that there's actually a form of currency out of it. You know, would you agree with that assessment, like that you just, this network you've made, not only your colleagues, but the broader network of people you met in the, you know, the travels, the parts of the program when you were in Boston or Silicon Valley? Was there real tangible value in your eyes, you know, for that?
Definitely, definitely. And I think it's also, to start with, it's also about your, how you go into those travels. So you have to just be open for new connections and maybe put your headphones off in the airplane and talk to some people next to you, you know, or
what?
Go exactly. That's it.
Shocking.
Sometimes you have to leave your Angry Birds
right
on the table, you know. That's how it works. And I think I really learned by also the Nancys. They told me a lot about that, to actually be open, more open, and talk to even more people. And at some point you end up in Yosemite Park with some new people you never met, and go camping with strangers, which can add value. You know what I mean? So
that's great that you had that experience. So, you know, speaking of being in Yosemite Park or other places, the program, you know, has a travel component to it. You went to the East Coast, you went to Chicago, you went to Silicon Valley. I'm going to open this up. I'm not going to go sequentially here per se. Just, you know, what were some of the highlights for any of you on this, whether it was in any of those locations or here in beautiful Kansas City?
Dean came in, right?
Yeah, Dean Kamen was fantastic at DECA in Boston, or outside of Boston. He had this robotics lab, which is just insane, and he's just a huge inventor, and it was really cool to just be sitting across the table from him and hearing sort of his past experiences and his just craving to build more stuff. It sort of just, I don't know, feeds off itself.
When he left the room, it was silent for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Just because everybody
was like,
it was like, whoa, we just saw a president or something.
consuming that, like what just happened, so to speak. So yeah, and I've had the good fortune of meeting Dean Kamen, and yeah, he's a pretty impressive guy. And I think for me, what I was really impressed with is the discipline with which he approaches innovation, you know, in design and that work. You know, I think for many people, they just think it's an organic process that you just wake up. I'm sure that's, Brandon, how your idea came to you, right? It was just an organic process that one day you said, oh, I should be, you know, reclaiming used wells for renewable energy.
Yeah, most definitely not.
So for you, what would be the, you know, like the big experience?
Yeah, I think the best part of it is you see in a very short time period the strengths and the weaknesses of a lot of different ecosystems in the country. So you know, as you move your technology and business forward, where to step and when to step, whether it's for human resources, staffing, whether it's for additional research. You know where those pockets of information are. And as far as, you know, community being the new currency, I completely agree with that, because it exposed us and it injected us into several communities, innovative leading communities, from the east to the east to the west coast, and you just wouldn't have been able to do that in that short of amount of time with that quality of network.
A sort of wild card into Wimbledon, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised that you didn't say that your biggest experience was snow.
Well, yeah, that was definitely a highlight.
That's a little inside joke.
Yeah.
We should probably tell the viewers this. If I remember this correctly, the first time you saw snow was here.
Yeah, like a real snow. I've seen a couple of flakes, like in Louisiana. I've seen snow twice. Like every decade, it snows once in Louisiana. Yeah, so that was an experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and boy, did we get it. And just for the record, the snow you experienced here was unusual even for here.
Okay.
A lot more than we would typically see. So you got a good dose of that.
Nice.
I wonder, as you go home now, you know, what you will think of most fondly, or you'll put to use. You know, was it a skill? Was it a connection you made? Was it a piece of intellectual property that, you know, helped you pivot? You know, I know it's probably a hard question, but, you know, people always want to know, like, what's the one thing you think 12 months from now you'll still be doing or reflecting or using or talking to, person you'll be talking to? What would that be?
I would definitely just revert back to the people that I've met throughout the process, because one of the things that I've noticed is that coming up with ideas in a confined box is just stupid. So you have to be constantly talking to people just being very self-aware that you don't have the answer, and that just sort of digging and trying to figure it out yourself is far less efficient than just calling someone that you know and trust, that you can hopefully transfer skills to at some point, or give them information that they need down the road when they need it. But I would say to absolutely the people, for sure.
So, the internships are a big part of the program. We kind of try to indoctrinate you at first, to give you kind of an inoculation, and then we send you off into the big bad world, and then you come back for the kind of the finishing touch, so to speak. So, if you could, in your own words, share a little bit of like what your internship experience was, and Eric, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so I did my internship at Adobe in Silicon Valley, and I see Adobe as one of the godfathers of the Silicon Valley, of course, and they really showed me how entrepreneurship has been done within a bigger corporation, and they are still super innovative within this big building. There's some stuff happening there, and although I cannot really go into the projects, I can tell you that I had a great time exploring also new things which I've never done.
Like, were you doing super secret stuff for them?
Super secret.
Wow, that's exciting.
No, but I really got to do some UI design, did some go-to-market strategies which I've never could have done without our theory boot camp in January, February, and March here at the foundation.
And I think it's important you noted that even though they're a large established company, they still have this very innovative spirit or culture.
Yeah, because I think that's also the Silicon Valley mentality. Everybody is thinking of doing something entrepreneurial. It's really like a state of mind which everybody shares.
Yep, I bet it was. Kelly, how about you? How was your internship experience?
It was awesome. I was at a company called Loyal3, so they're trying to change the way retail investors are able to buy stock. So they allow for no commissions, no minimum balance, and you can buy stock for as little as $10. So you can own $10 worth of Berkshire Hathaway, which is really cool because that's kind of before that inaccessible to the general public. So to me, it was a really transformative experience. One, because what really stood out, it's this 80-person company. They just raised their Series C. They're moving forward. It's a highly regulated industry. So the idea of coming in as a new player and trying to disrupt a very sort of static industry is really exciting, and also really requires you to have a sort of transformative vision and stick to that vision, which the entire company just does, which is incredible. So the CEO leads it, and everyone kind of latches on to a vision of making investing accessible for the everyday person.
Did your experience there help you understand the need to pivot in your own idea?
Yes and no. I'd say that what I really took away from my experience was that coming up with a really sort of innovative idea is hard, and it takes a long time, and it's not this quick thing that you can just kind of throw on the App Store and you have 5 billion people using it type of thing.
Yeah, everything isn't Instagram.
Right, exactly. So it's really hard, but it hopefully pays off in the end when you're trying to change an industry. Is sort of the biggest thing I took away.
Very neat. Brandon, how about you? What was your big takeaway, or where did you intern, and what was that like?
Yeah, sure. First part of the internship was with Infinia Corporation. They're a solar mechanical manufacturer, and the second part was with the Los Angeles Clean Tech Initiative, specifically with the city's incubator. So getting back to the first part of the internship with Infinia Corporation, I chose Infinia because their executive team came from automobile manufacturer called Autoliv, and I wanted to learn more about how a company facilitates the innovation and transition from an innovative product to manufacturing. And I figured no best place to go than study and work with former automobile experienced 30-plus year veterans. That, being the decision, was a great one. Infinia was a great company. They've got some great people leading it, and I was able to interface with the engineering teams, the sales teams, the purchasing teams, the design teams, the field installation guys, the marketing, and it was just a great experience to add value to their company while also learning how to best structure a manufacturing focused company that actually manufactures a product instead of a commodity such as oil and gas.
And so from there, you went to the city of Los Angeles, and there, Was it Clean Tech Incubator?
The Clean Tech Incubator for the city of Los Angeles.
What was that like? I mean, when I think of that, you know, it seems like there's kind of an interface, right, between government and the concerns at the community level and technology. So how did you find the relevancy to what you were doing with that?
Well, first off, what I'm working on, it's a way to produce a synthetic fuel or chemical using a renewable process. So with the renewable side, that brings into geothermal and solar. So the Los Angeles Clean Tech Initiative, they have a portfolio of companies, and some of them are solar, some of them are biotech, some of them are electric vehicle companies. And the city is trying to align, basically, how do we keep the transportation cost low within the city of Los Angeles and greater surrounding region with 10 million plus people. Because as energy prices go up, it's a threat to their infrastructure. Sure. So their focus is how do we make transportation affordable for all and continue to make it affordable for all, right? So they're diversifying their energy portfolio basically to keep the city going for 50 plus years.
Smart strategy for them if you're worrying about the scale and growth of the population.
Yeah, so agree completely. And the value was, as a resident scholar, visiting scholar, was to add value to the portfolio companies, provide Q&A advice, and then they had a specific research area that they wanted me to focus on. So I was able to add value as a chemical engineer within a group of mostly electrical and mechanical engineers. And that's the same as Infinia Corporation. They had a lot of good electrical and mechanical engineers, but no chemical engineer on staff. So it was neat to add value to both organizations and to cultivate and keep those relationships going forward.
So I'm going to throw out a toss-up question. A lot of what's changing in entrepreneurship education in the broadest context is really this pivot to experiential base. It's not, pitch and plan. We even had, Eli founder Gary Schoniger talk to you guys about that. In your own experiences and in your own words, how would you describe the experiential component to this program from a value to you personally standpoint?
I would say it just doesn't even make sense to do anything aside from experiential learning. I would do 100% experiential learning because it doesn't, just given where people have their phones and their laptops, a lot of times I see, and I've experienced this with my own pilot program, you sit in a classroom, people are on their phones, they're on their computer, they're writing emails. If you're not actively engaging people, then they're not getting better at something. And I also just think that the more that you talk to people, the more you clarify what you're doing for your own business, the more you find needs. You find unexpected needs just by chatting with people.
I'm going to follow up on that. And related in the experiential component, what goes hand in glove with that is also peer-to-peer learning. Like you don't have to have the subject matter expert tell you something, but you can teach each other. Yeah. We baked that into the program. Did you think there was, that was useful? Do you think there was value in doing that?
Yes,
Definitely.
I think you have an example between these two right here, right? The knowledge share.
I think there was a lot of knowledge sharing between everybody. After 3 o'clock, we always had like a lot of time to, cook together, talk about new projects we were working on, and actually work together, really get to the next level. So we had a lot of time for that.
So I do know about this example between the two of you. So you got to be an instructor of sorts. And in some cases you're the student, right?
Yeah.
As the teacher.
She made my spreadsheets for my company, so.
So that was the trade-off.
And she hedged a few funds. Some Wall Street stuff going on there.
Well, that's awesome. You jumped ahead to where I was going. Like I wanted to just, there has to be some value in being in that instructor role too, don't you think? I mean,
Definitely.
You get something out of that. I suppose the reason I was just pointing that out is one of the questions I get a lot, is in a mentoring capacity, do you find it hard to engage entrepreneurs? And I always am fond of saying entrepreneurs are some of the most generous people that I've ever encountered because they give and they take, and even in the giving, they get something in return. Mm-hmm.
I think that that's just something that I've learned, and I said this in my final presentation, of like adopting a mentality or just like a life view of giving before you get. I think as an entrepreneur, you have to become an expert at that because at the beginning stages, you're taking a lot. You're taking people's time, you're taking their expertise, you're picking their minds about stuff. So you have to be really creative about giving something to them. Either it's letting them know how you're progressing or just sort of buying their coffee. I don't know what it is, but you have to be creative about that so that they feel like it's a mutual exchange of their time or expertise for something.
You never buy me coffee.
Yeah, I can't think of a better way to end this discussion on that point, on giving back. I think that's great. Kelly, thank you so much for making it so eloquently for us all. Yes, I think you might. Guys, thanks for participating in the program. I hope you got a lot out of it. You know, go forth and remember that. When you're all big, rich, and famous, please remember us fondly.
Definitely.
We will.
Thank you.